You're listening to The Novice Experience, a podcast that explores the opportunities and challenges commonly encountered by students and young people. I'm Calvin Chan, and chatting with my guests, I'm going to take a deep dive into their meaningful stories, the lessons they've learned, and how they can inspire others. Let's get going. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Novice Experience. Today, my guest is Jessica Hwang. She's a lighting artist for computer animated films, and she was a part of many films produced by Sony Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Netflix, including Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Hotel Transylvania 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Hello Ninja on Netflix, and Cats.
I love that last one, the way you said it.
And, obviously there was a lot of news around Cats, Jessica, but I know that obviously it was an experience for yourself, and you said you've learned a lot from it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So before we start, I'd like to get my guests to tell our listeners a brief origin story, sort of where you're from, some of the defining moments in your life, and the experiences that make up who you are today.
Ooh, cool. All right. Kind of feel like one of those like comic book characters where they do that little like blip of like going back into where they all came from and an origin story. But
Like the backstory?
Yes, exactly. But I am nothing like that. I am just an ordinary person that has been born and raised in Vancouver. So growing up, I kind of always been pretty artsy. And if you don't know already, tends to be in like the Asian culture that's not ideal or not really encouraged. Like I remember, did you watch this show called like Art Attack? It's like back in the 90s.
No, I think that's way too old for
Really?
me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, now I feel super old. Either way, there's this like one show that I always grew up watching in the mornings. It's called Art Attack, and I think it's this Australian guy. Who basically he's in this like huge room with like really giant paintbrushes and like paint tubes and stuff, and he basically does really cool art projects. Like either he takes like old clothing or like scrapbook paper and makes these really like amazing creative things, and I would always like grab whatever I could in my house and just follow along with him and make art projects. So like I think from early on, ever since I was a kid, I've always had a very like creative, imaginative mind, and like and my parents, I think they kind of like were supportive of that as a kid, because like when you're like a little kid, like that's just like a phase, like they're not actually gonna pursue something in that career, like so they didn't really like do anything to help like thrive that side of my brain. Of course they wanted me to be good at math, sciences, all the academic things that will lead you to a career that will hopefully bring the family lots of money and like stability. So yeah, basically having that creative side, growing up into high school, and I have an older brother, 3 years older than me. I'm Brian, and Brian is a very smart. Like he's like the opposite of me. He's really, really like naturally talented in like sciences.
Right,
math.
sciences. Yeah.
And that one for me was a little bit hard to compete with, because like he was already in the favor of like doing so well in the standards of like Asian parents. And for me, like to kind of go up against that, it was a lot of pressure. So high school was kind of a really hard time for me too, because I already started to feel like I wasn't fitting in, not only of what my parents want me to be like, but also like the rest of my family, like the eyes of society, of like what it's like to be a successful person, and just trying to find out who I am and how I fit into this world was just so hard, because I felt like I need to be smart in that area, and that if I wasn't, then I wouldn't really have any other purpose or meaning at all as a being, which is kind of actually a really depressing thought.
Right.
And I think that's a big reason why I struggled so damn much in high school and university. And of course it came to grad year of now my brother being in UBC Sciences, and then my parents kind of bringing me up to this question of like, okay, so which school are you going to apply to, and like which faculty? And I remember just thinking to myself, being like, okay, so the options they're giving me is like sciences, so I can be like a doctor or something. go into law so I can be a lawyer, or like I don't know, go into dentistry, like, or actually my dad wanted me to be also like a concert pianist or like a piano teacher, so that was also an option. But and then the other option was business, and for me, business was out of all the other options seemed like the most workable for me because I thought, okay, I like talking to people
Right.
and I like helping people grow. Maybe I could be in like an HR rep or something. So then I thought that I could just go into business school, and maybe that would be the path that I could finally feel like I would finally fit into this like cookie cutter mold of what society would want me to be in. Um, so that was like the schooling family bit of a overview.
Right. And you were also in Air Cadets with me,
Yeah,
and I remember we met when you joined my unit, and you became sort of
yeah,
the team leader.
yeah.
And definitely like our time together, it was really transformative for me because you were the leader for our military drill team, and obviously you passed on a lot of good points of view, your perspective and your opinion on life in general, or how we work as a team. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely, like, I really appreciated our time
Yeah.
together then.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because like I was like as I was talking, I was like, wait, I just like missed this like whole big chunk of my life.
Right.
But
Yeah,
then
I was surprised.
yeah, I think I was gonna just about to touch back on that because I was trying to think further back of like what drove me to actually think about business school in that way and also consider doing film school was so basically cadets for me was kind of like almost like a really transformative way for me to figure out who I am and what I value. Um, and before meeting you, being at another squadron, I was also struggling a lot in that previous squadron of, again, feeling that same feeling of that I needed to fit a certain standard or a certain way to feel successful. And that way was to kind of fill in the shoes that my brother put in front of me of like
Hmm.
his successes, how he was as a leader, and obviously we know that everybody's different, and it's always very difficult to try to make yourself fit so hard into a box that wasn't meant for you. Um, so I think going to 655 and meeting you has been so life changing because it kind of made me really starting to realize and peek into what it's like to find your own shoebox to fit in.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Likewise.
yeah,
I think our ideas feed off each other really well.
yeah,
And
100%.
we're going to talk in this episode, we're going to talk about embracing change and having the courage to find your true passion throughout your education or career paths. But before we start, I like to do a segment called Give Me Five. It's sort of a virtual icebreaker between you and the listeners.
Ooh.
So I'm gonna ask you some questions, rapid fire style, and
Oh,
you
wow.
don't have
Okay.
you can give one word answers. You can give really long answers. There's no
Yeah,
right or wrong.
yeah.
So the first question: you've traveled to quite a few places now in the world.
Yes.
Uh, which is your favorite country, and where do you want to head to next?
Oh! I feel like you probably wouldn't know this, but right now New Zealand is
Hmm.
my love land. Love land sounds so weird. More like just my dreamland of where I would want to be, like, I don't know, retired or something like that. And where I would want to go next, I think probably would be. Can I put more than one place, or it has to be like one?
Sure,
Okay. Um.
any answer you want.
Okay. I would say either Japan
Ooh,
or I'm gonna say Germany.
okay.
Yes.
I think those are very nice places to
Nice.
go to next.
Da-
Different cultures.
danke, danke.
Hmm. What was one of your favorite animated films when you were growing up?
Ooh. Can I just one, or like can I put multiple answers again?
You can put multiple,
Okay, because it's a little hard for me to narrow down to this one.
right?
Animated. So just like okay. Uh Okay, Lion King is gonna be one of them.
Oh my
The
god,
the
that's on top
original.
of my list too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I remember just watching that so many times and just crying so much every time
Right?
Mufasa died. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it, but at the same time, if you haven't seen it, why?
Shame on you. Shame
Yeah,
on you.
exactly. Oh, another animated. Hoo. Okay, Mulan.
Oh, you like Mulan?
Yes, I think I felt like I related so much to her character.
Uh-huh.
Because the themes that she goes through as a character is so much of what I felt so connected to growing up in high school. Like just what I was kind of talking about, like a whole overview of like feeling like you can't fit into what your parents expect of you, and you're
Mm-hmm.
trying so hard. So
I
yeah,
love it. I love it. And with like,
yes,
the women and the Asian culture that
yes,
come, the themes that come along in the movie
oh,
that
100%.
I really love. Um, top of my list, it's Lion King and Toy Story. I really like the Toy Story
Oh, all of them.
movies. All of them. All four.
Yes, yes, so good.
Who do you admire the most?
Wow. I feel like if I don't say one of my family members, like I'm gonna get some like shade.
Oh no.
Who do I admire most? Okay, to be extra cheesy, I'll say my brother and my dad. Um, my dad mostly because, briefly to put it, our relationship has changed a lot for the better, especially in
Mm-hmm.
the like since changing my career and everything. And I think when you're older, it's hard to change. And the fact that he did put the effort to try to understand more and see things in a different perspective, I think is really commendable and something I hope I can do myself when I'm older. Um, and because it's easy to get really stagnant and just kind of stuck in your own ways. And I really admire my brother because he as well has changed so much as a person, and also our relationship has changed a lot too through the years of first being quite quote unquote estranged from each other in high school because of how different we were and how much I actually kind of resented him in some ways because of how talented
Oh,
he was in every way in school and cadets and how it felt so hard to fill in his shoes and kind of just be stuck in his shadow. So like it was a little bit of a rougher relationship in high school, but I'm really happy to say that like now we're in a place that he's kind of like my rock when the waves are high and it's really difficult. And I really admire him for how strong and resilient he is as a person and how much he continues to support me no matter how crazy the waves are.
I hope Brian is in tears right now.
Oh yeah,
Right?
that's the goals one day. Make him cry. Yeah.
Last question. What is the thing you're most afraid of?
Woo! I like that question. Feel like I thought about this quite a bit, but not so much recently, so it's gonna take a little bit longer for me to answer that one. I would say the thing I am most afraid of is feeling like at the end of my life, I look back at my life and feeling regret that I didn't live it the way I had hoped.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I guess I guess there's no right or wrong way to live, but I find that it's really interesting that death and being limited on time is the driving force of what we do in
Oh
life.
yeah.
If we had unlimited time, then there wouldn't be motivation to do anything great in our lives. So, you're spot on
Oh,
with that
oh yeah,
feeling.
for sure. Thank you. I think it's kind of like that feeling like we want to leave like a legacy behind
Hmm.
us after we pass on.
For
Yeah.
sure. Um, okay, so I know that you studied and you graduated from Vancouver Film School in
Yes.
3D animation
Yes.
and visual effects.
Yes.
You're a lighting artist.
Yes.
Could you just briefly tell our listeners what a lighting artist does?
Okay. So every time people ask me about what my job is, I always try to put. So if you guys seen the movie Pixar's Up, which I
Yes,
hope you have because it's amazing, an amazing film,
it's
and
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember like so remember in the first like I think 10 minutes of the movie, like you see the whole life of Ellie and Carl, of
Mm-hmm.
like them growing up as kids and then getting married and then having that really tragic loss of a baby and just that whole sequence in itself. And you just feel
Mm-hmm.
so much emotion. You feel like you're with the characters the whole time. So a lot of the thing that contributes to that is actually lighting. And what I mean by that is like the colors you see on screen, the time of day it is, and that whatever scene it is, if it's like nighttime or daytime. Um, Especially there's some scenes, for example, like after she passes, where you see Carl, he's at the kitchen table, and like there's a specific light that's just shining on the chair that's empty, and that in its way is a excellent tool to tell a story through lighting. It's just that it's highlighting a spot that she used to be in, but she's no longer in because he's now lost her partner or his partner.
Mm-hmm.
So lighting. So what I do is basically I in the software in 3D space, I put lights to be able to kind of tell the audience what time of day it is or like where we are in the story. And a lot of it is a very emotional and like storytelling tool, and it helps guide your eye of where to look at, where to focus at. Kind of influences how you feel too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a lot to do with like
Oh,
color and contrast.
it's all very interesting.
Yeah,
And I know that you didn't start in the film industry. You were
no,
studying business, like you were mentioning
yeah.
earlier, when you first got to university. And at what point did you realize that it wasn't right for you?
Ah, okay. Yeah, sorry about that whole like overview in the beginning. I was like rambling on and on. I was trying to get to that
No,
point.
no.
But yeah, so for me it was second year university, and again like trying to fit myself into an expectation from other people of what they wanted from me. Um and usually I think in second year is when you're like having to like choose your like focus or something on your faculty of like whether it's going to be like accounting or like finance, marketing, etc. And I remember just being amongst my friends at school, and they were all so sure of like what they want to do, and just like I sat there I think watching them talk about their career and like what choice they were making in this like in the university that we're in, and just seeing like how happy or driven they looked talking about it. It kind of helped highlight to me how much of that I didn't feel
Right.
being in school, studying that, and how almost lifeless I think I felt. I felt like I didn't know at all of what I would even want to choose. And it quite scared me because going back to that question that you asked me of like what do I fear the most, I felt like this feeling inside of me that I was going to regret it if I just kept on riding this wave that other people set me on, or more like my parents set me on. Um, and I felt really scared, I think, having that feeling because I realized that in order for me to try to feel better about myself and to feel like myself, feel alive, and to find that thing for me that will make me feel like that light in my eye or that passion in my heart of like doing what I love as a career. Like I knew I had to confront a lot of those really scary, intimidating waves that I was trying to ride of those expectations that my parents have set on me, and also
Mm-hmm.
like just extended family too. Because actually, my entire family, like all my cousins and everyone, are all like successful, like business engineer and like computer engineers and everything. So like I'm kind of almost like quote unquote the black sheep, I think, of the family,
Right.
where it's more of like an artistic path. Yeah.
But how did you deal with the feelings of fear and self-doubt and, in a way, loneliness, when everyone around you is
Mm,
fitting into the norm?
yeah.
And what was it like communicating
That to
your
my
beliefs?
parents or.
Yeah, or to people around you,
Mm,
even your classmates who were
yeah.
you said were so driven.
Yeah.
How did you have to deal with that?
Mm. So I think at school I kind of did. I think it was a little obvious because not only did I not enjoy it, but it also showed in my grades too. Where I wasn't doing well in my classes, and of course my friends could kind of notice that, and I think some of them, I can't remember the conversations too well now because it's been a while, but I do remember kind of just telling them how, like, hey guys, like, I just don't know what I'm gonna choose. Like, I feel like I don't like anything that is offered of like all these paths that they tell you to choose. Like, I don't fit into any of it, and I kind of just told them how like I kind of feel lost. And I remember really, really clearly where I think it was like before finals for a certain term. And I remember just being downstairs in my house in the dining room and just sitting there studying, trying to study, and I knew that nothing was sticking to my brain and it was nothing I felt passionate about or interested in. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, why am I wasting so much time and energy into something I don't believe in or I just can't see myself doing down the road? Because it kind of depressed me thinking about like what if I'm just like some like working in a career that I just can't, that I just feel like this feeling of depression, I think, for the rest of my life. Like I just could not bear that idea. And Brian actually, so my brother, he actually came down the stairs and he saw me studying, and I think he could
Mm-hmm.
tell that there's something up with me because I've been, at least for those 2 years in university, I think I was pretty depressed. And I didn't talk about it too much, I think, with people around me. And Brian came down and he kind of sat down with me and was kind of asking me a lot of questions about my future and how I
Mm-hmm.
felt. And I think it was quite an emotional talk. I do remember crying, I think. And I told him how
Right.
I just felt so much. Even right now, just thinking about it again, I'm getting a little bit emotional. Just thinking how, like, I realized that I only have this life that I'm living right now that I know of. Like, I'm not going to get, like, a second chance. Um, and knowing that I have this one chance, like, it's kind of terrifying to think about how I'm going to waste it trying to do something that I feel like would make others happy, but not myself. Um, and
And it's a really tough and deep thought for someone, who's early in your studies and careers to have,
yeah,
where you're already thinking so far ahead of, perhaps you're going to regret where you are right now. So,
yeah,
definitely, like, I'm happy to hear your brother being there for you,
yeah,
to talk about it.
yeah,
And
for
it's
sure.
definitely, it deserves a moment, where you're emotional and you're just feeling really raw about your choices and what's going
Hmm.
through your mind.
Yeah, for sure. Talking to him brought me a lot of clarity because it kind of like, because he did really put into perspective. Like, you do know that like he put this much effort into something you really don't enjoy. Like, you're putting so much effort to a degree for so many more years, for a future you don't believe in. Like, talking to him brought me a lot of clarity and like courage to try to confront this idea that I do kind of have to confront these really difficult emotions I've been feeling for so many years of having to confront my parents, of like making them realize like, hey, like I can't keep on pretending to be this person that you want me to be. Um, and I kind of like thought back to just not only about my childhood, but about me as a person and what drives me
Mhm.
to be happy, to feel fulfilled. And coming back to cadets, and part of the reason why joining your squadron has brought me so much more confidence in myself and believe myself as a person is realizing that sharing my story to people, not only helps me feel more confident and believing in myself more as a person and realize that I do have a purpose in life and that I'm not just this blank being that's just trying to fit somewhere. But I realize that there's a lot of people out there too that can feel similarly. And when you share your
Mhm.
story, it helps make everyone else feel less alone. And
And
yeah,
Jessica, why is it so hard to accept change?
yeah,
A lot of students struggle with, rather traditional social constructs or norms that they have to have, their lives figured out
yeah,
at a certain time, right? And people feel so pressured to hit those specific thresholds that it becomes their whole life purpose.
hmm,
And when they don't meet these expectations, it can easily, leave them feeling lost or
yeah,
unsuccessful in a way.
yeah,
So first of all, why is it so hard to accept change?
Um, for me, I think like accepting change or trying to embrace it, I kind of always describe it as a feeling like you're stepping or standing on the edge of a cliff. Or if you guys seen Spider-Verse, there's like a specific moment where Miles Morales is trying to ask Peter Parker of like what it takes to become Spider-Man, or like what it takes to be able to feel like you can do it. And Peter Parker, I think he says to him, saying like how it feels like you just have to take a leap and you just have to go for it. And I think that feeling in itself is terrifying because it feels like you're just jumping off into nothing, or jumping off and losing everything you ever had in life, and taking all the risk to possibly fall into a path that could lead to nothing. So I think a lot of people, or at least I know for myself, like it was really terrifying to embrace and go for that change because it feels like you're unstable. You're going to be falling out of a place that you felt kind of comfortable in, whether it was good for you or not. And you're losing for all the other foundations or the castle or the mountain you've built for yourself. And I feel like a feeling of loss and feeling like you're jumping into the unknown is absolutely terrifying. So why
Is that a reference to Frozen 2?
I guess honestly, okay, I did watch that movie, but I forgot at one point. Yeah, I need to rewatch that. I forgot that reference. But
Into the Unknown?
yes! Into the Unknown! How could I forget? There's a freaking song about it. Yeah, so it's kind of like why people don't skydive all the time. Why people don't, I don't know, what's another reference of like, I don't know, like tight roping. Things like that. Like things that shake you to your bone, and it's such a terrifying feeling. But I think when you come out of that, like when you come across that tightrope, when you survive that skydive, when you step off that cliff and you plunge into like the deep blue ocean and you're like swimming through it beautifully with all the fish, like when you're able to come out of those really terrifying moments that you're embracing change for, like you feel so much more rewarded and empowered after. It's like a hell of a euphoric feeling. And it gets quite addicting to chase after. I think that feeling to feel that empowerment after coming out of a really terrifying decision. Yeah.
There's so much that we need to talk about, but this ends part 1 of our conversation. Next week in part 2, we're going to come back and talk about how, for someone who's trying to take that leap of faith, how they can put that into action, and what would be going into their mindset and the mentality part of it, and how to mitigate the risks of taking that leap of faith. So thank you so much for joining me to do part 1.
Yeah,
and then
for
we'll
sure.
talk again.
Hell yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Novice Experience. Our theme song is Concrete Jungle by Audio Binger. You can find us or reach out on social media at The Novice Exp. That's The Novice EXP. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on all your podcast listening platforms. Talk to you next time.